No Time to Wait. Daniel Craig and Kate Middleton feature prominently there next to Peter Credlin's beautiful shot with her column coming up tomorrow. But it's all about the budget. The headline screams budget's $80 billion rebound. Australia's budget deficit at the time of the Delta outbreak was nearly $80 billion less than forecast in the first year of the pandemic, coming in at around $135 billion on the back of a sharp recovery in the jobs market and a reduction in welfare payments. The rebound is further evidence the national economic recovery was in an even stronger position than expected before the third wave lockdowns imposed by the state governments in response to the more contagious Delta strain. This is nothing but good news we've heard from Josh Frydenberg this week, isn't it, Caleb? This is probably going to be a well-received story in Liberal and coalition circles tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, we don't necessarily have to pat ourselves on the back for not spending money that we'd budgeted that we would spend. I mean, that's a bonus. It's not necessarily a saving as much as the government will try to sell it as a saving. But it is an indicator that the economy has broadly across the country bounced back quite well from COVID. Now, when we get to the other side of these lockdowns in Victoria and New South Wales, we may well see a different localised story. But in general, the response of the federal government last year, which was to keep business afloat, basically make sure that people could afford to pay their rent, people who were out of work weren't destitute, did wonders for keeping the economy alive. And of course, people who couldn't spend money overseas when they were allowed to get out of their houses spent it in Australia. People were always going to want to spend money again, and they came out and did that in droves. I just hope that the effect of these state lockdowns that we're seeing at the moment don't hinder that exercise, because I mean, particularly Victoria, which has been through something like 240 odd days of lockdown now, you know, we've probably still got another month or so to go. That is a massive hit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we've heard from Treasurer Josh Frydenberg on the front page of today's Australian talking about how those recovery packages will be won back when we hit vaccination rates. But do you think that these numbers are real, considering you are based in Victoria at the basically ground zero when it comes to Delta right now? Are these numbers real, or do you think we're going to see the realisation of the impact of COVID on the economic side of things when we come out of lockdown? Because just this week we were seeing images and footage of people lining up outside food banks in inner city Melbourne. So do you think that these are real, or are these numbers a little bit inflated right now?
No, I suspect they might be real if you averaged them out across the country. Places like WA and Queensland and South Australia and the Northern Territory that have been largely open are probably doing quite well, and are probably doing quite well in terms of domestic tourism as well. But I think if you look at it at a local level in Melbourne and Sydney, it's not the same story. All you have to do is walk around the Melbourne CBD and see the for lease signs on nearly every third building. And you know that something is wrong. And like you say, that lineup we saw at the front of Food Bank, like, you know, it's not all roses in Melbourne. So it is somewhat disingenuous to take average figures across the country and say, well, all is fine and dandy, because in the two biggest cities in the country, I don't think it's quite that good.